Hi, I'm Kelsey with This Is NOCO, and I'm here with Kelly Kellow, the senior horticulturist at Gardens on Spring Creek. And every spring, I love looking at my garden, but every fall, I pretty much forget it exists, and I don't get anything ready for the next spring. So if you're like me, we're going to fix that for you today. So every spring, I love to see the plants that grow in my garden and things that just come up on their own. But then every fall, I just kind of ignore them and I forget they exist. But I know there are so many things I could be doing to keep them healthy and make sure that my garden flourishes the next year. So what are great things to do in the fall to take care of your garden and make sure that everything's ready for the spring?
Yeah, there's a lot of great activities to do in your garden in the fall. One of the first things that you want to do is make sure that you're pruning all the dead and spent flowers from your established plants. Another thing to do is to, if you haven't yet, is to put on a thin layer of mulch. This helps insulate the perennials to make sure that they successfully overwinter into the spring. Another thing to do is to rake the leaves in your garden. There's a few different ways to rake your leaves. Of course, you want to take all the leaves off of your lawn because that can create mold and stuff if you leave them on your lawn over the winter. And then in the garden, you want to be able to rake majority of the leaves, but also leave some at the base of plants because that creates an insulation and it protects pollinators that burrow in the ground over winter.
Awesome. It is a big debate in our house that people say to leave the leaves. And so you're saying that it is good to leave the leaves in your garden, but you want a thin layer. We're not trying to leave 2 feet of leaves around your plants.
Right, because a lot of these perennials that people have in their gardens are going to be kind of native, water-wise type plants, and they just don't like too much moisture at the base of their plants. So leaving some of the leaves is great for those pollinators, but not too thick. Another great task to do is to lightly prune. I had already mentioned doing dead flowers, anything that's diseased or dead. But you want to wait for your heavier pruning in late winter, early fall, so late January to February. That is going to be like your trees and shrubs. And you want to be careful to not prune spring flowering trees and shrubs. Those include your forsythias, your lilacs, viburnums. If you cut them in the fall, they will not be blooming in the spring. They form their flower buds in the fall for next spring. It's really good to know the shrubs in your garden and or do some research on whether or not they're spring flowering.
What is the key to know if something has just stopped blooming or if it's diseased or dying so that I could distinguish?
Usually when you notice something that is dead, the flower heads will be really brown and kind of crunchy, and there will be big evidence of reseeding. This Gaillardia aristata has multiple stages of blooming versus not blooming. This right here has fully gone to seed. You can tell the seeds easily pull off. You can actually collect these and reuse them. This is a flower head that is just done blooming. And of course, this is a flower that is still blooming.
So if I was going to collect the seeds for these, would I then replant them now or would I wait until the spring?
It would be best to take the seeds off like this, and this is even what I do at home. I go like this into other spaces in your garden that you would want the same plant.
Excellent. That's easy enough. I can do that.
Another thing that I do in my garden and we do here at the gardens is that we leave a lot of perennials up in the winter. We don't cut them all the way down to the ground. Some of these native plants in the wild are used to being left all winter long, and then the deer come in the spring and mow them down for them. Also, it creates good winter interest. And in the spring, once those plants start coming up from the bottom, then it's a good time to cut them back.
So now once we have taken care of everything in the fall, our garden is looking great. What are things that we can plant in the fall that will bloom in the spring to be ready for us?
Yeah, there are actually 2 different times in the season to be planting. The first time, of course, is early in the spring and then later in the fall. So anytime between August and early October is a great time to plant pretty much anything. You can do trees, shrubs, perennials, bulbs, of course. You don't want to go any later in October because you need these root balls to be able to establish. Once it gets colder, the ground starts freezing, the roots move a lot slower, and it's just harder for them to establish. A lot of these you can plant until October.
Awesome. And I know often we get snow around Halloween. So would you say the first second week of October is enough time for them to get established, or can you go a little later than that?
I think at least before Halloween, the week or so before Halloween.
Is there anything special you need to put in the soil with things that you're planting in the fall, or can you plant them just like you would in the spring and they'll be ready to go?
I always like to add a little bit of compost to my soil when I'm planting, so you could absolutely do that.
So what are some great northern Colorado plants that we could plant in the fall for the spring?
There are a lot of good perennials, but some of my favorites are liatris, which is meadow blazing star. There is eryngiums that are globe thistles. There are all kinds of sedums. I just love sedums because they are super native. And then another good one is coneflowers. Coneflowers are very native to this area and they do great here.
So those were some great perennials. What are some things that we could plant as bulbs that will come up in the spring?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is crocus. Crocus are great early spring bloomers that have so much pollen for those early pollinators. Another one are tulips, of course, and daffodils. And then there are a lot of different species tulips that you can plant that also bloom really early in the spring for those pollinators.
Are there any of those in the garden that we could go see?
Absolutely.
Awesome, let's go. So what plants do we have up here?
This right here is called Eryngium planum, or globe thistle. It is a great perennial for our area. It's drought tolerant. It clearly is pretty happy here. It's easy to grow, and the best of all, it is a great pollinator plant.
Yeah, I see all of the bees on here are so happy. This be one that we plant in the fall?
Yes, it is a great time to plant this right now.
Excellent. And does it bloom all season? They look great now. So what time of the year does it bloom?
I would say right now is its peak season. So it is a little bit later, which is great for extended food for pollinators.
Now that we're ready to plant, what are some things that we need to take into consideration when looking at design and spacing, and how do we care for the plant once it's in the ground?
The first thing about designing is that you really need to know what the plant is going to be size-wise at full maturity. Because even though they're small now, it doesn't mean that they're going to stay this small. This one will get, 2 feet tall, 2 feet wide. So you need to make sure that you are giving it enough space to grow few years down the road.
And you're saying that's probably not even going to be next season. Right. That's at full maturity.
Full maturity takes a few seasons. So today we are going to be planting Asclepias tuberosa. It is a orange butterfly weed. It's great for pollinators, and this is our kind of pollinator garden. So first thing we're going to do is move the mulch back of the spot that we're going to be planting until you get to the bare soil. Then take your trowel or shovel and dig your hole. So you want to make sure that your hole is going to be wide enough and deep enough for your pot. I think that is deep enough. You never want to plant it too high up on the plant, and you never want it to be too low on the plant. If this part is exposed, it will dry out faster.
Okay.
And you will have to water it twice as much.
Oh.
And if you plant it too deep, there's possibility of it rotting out. So then what you're going to do is kind of scrape up the root ball like this. This helps the roots from being compacted in the pot. It will encourage them to spread outwards, which will help them establish faster.
Okay. This always makes me worry that I'm just breaking the roots, but it will actually let them grow in a new direction.
They will be happy that you did it.
Okay. sense.
All right, next we're gonna add a little bit. This hole is pretty small, so we're gonna add just a handful of compost into the bottom. And I like to mix it into the native soil. Compost is great for soils that are super heavy clay, like this one. If you can grab the soil and make it into a ball, that's pretty much that. It's pretty heavy clay. So compost is great to help break these clay molecules up. All right, then we're gonna put our plant into the hole and cover it up like this. I'm gonna be breaking this clay clumps up. Otherwise, they kind of stay in big chunks like this when you refill the hole. Do something like that. I like to give them little taps in. You don't want to compact the soil too much by really pushing hard. You want a little bit of room for the water and air to go to the root and into the new hole too. Next, then we're gonna put the mulch back.
Okay. And that mulch, you said, insulates the plant and keeps it moisture locked in.
Yep, moisture locked in. It prevents weeds and kind of protects the plant.
So now that the plant is planted, it's the fall. Do I really need to do anything with it until the spring?
Yes, these plants still need to be watered to get established. I would say start the first 2 weeks every day-ish, every other day. After the 2 weeks, knock it back to twice a week. A lot of people turn their irrigation systems off in late October, so by that time, you can stop watering it. If we have periods of drought in the winter, like last year, we had no moisture until January. In order to have a successful planting, you gotta come out and water these plants. And that is not just your perennials. That's really essential to your trees and your shrubs and your grasses and other plants.
That is not something that I have been doing in the winter. So it's really good to know that even though they are dormant or it's the winter, if it's not raining or snowing, we still need to get out and plant and water.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for spending your morning with us and teaching us about all the things that we can do to prepare our gardens for the spring. And if you guys are looking for inspiration for perennials, come to the Gardens on Spring Creek. They have so many different perennials that are inspiration for your garden, and so that our gardens can start to look half as good as theirs do.
I'm Kelly, and this is the Gardens on Spring Creek.
And I'm Kelsey, and this is NOCO.